Hi, welcome. This is Dr. Campbell. Welcome to our session today, our strategic planning session, which is titled Teaching Slavery. We do have a few panel guests, and once we have this very short presentation, we're going to turn it over to the panel. Just a little bit about myself. I have a doctorate degree in educational leadership from Rowan University, 2008. I've been in education for 24 years and counting, racial equity consultant for 12 years and counting. I have authored 12 books, 7 on racial equity, 5 on marriage. I'm also fortunate enough to have a course that has been approved by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. It's a 12-week racial equity course, which meets the Act 48 requirements. I do workshops for administrators as well as teachers, and my racial equity course is titled Promoting Positive Racial Teacher-Student Classroom Relationships. At the end of this presentation, I will tell you about a contest that we're having at Quarantine Racism. Now let's take a look at our case study for today. Of course, you know that during Black History Month, there were many teachers that were doing lessons for students, and some of them had challenges with the lessons that they did. And I found an article titled Mock Slave Auctions, Racist Lessons, How U.S. History Class Often Traumatizes and dehumanizes Black students. There was a group of teachers in Wisconsin. They gave the 6th grade students an assignment, and the assignment was that they wanted to know how to punish a slave. A Florida high school teacher has been suspended for allegedly telling students that slaves were not whipped by white people, and that the N-word was just means to be ignorant. So she's trying to change the English language. A student teacher in Tennessee, she gave her 4th grade students an assignment called Let's Make a Slave, which is a speech from the 1700s about keeping Blacks under control. And finally, a 5th grade teacher was accused of holding a mock slave auction in which white students were bidding on Black students, and this happened in New York. Now we're going to take a look at a very, very short video about some of the things that are not being taught to students in history class.
The root cause of the Civil War is clear.
What caused the Civil War was
slavery.
The main cause and why the South decided to secede was for slavery.
But according to a report from the Southern Poverty Law Center, only 8% of high school seniors surveyed could name slavery as the root cause of the Civil War. So why do our history textbooks get it so wrong?
Y'all don't want to deal with the fucked up shit that y'all ancestors did.
Textbooks are written and edited for states.
This is Antoinette Waters, a history teacher at Wakefield High School in Arlington, Virginia, who says the state
has the final say in what is in a textbook.
Which is how you end up with textbooks like this 1993 textbook from Alabama, which opens its brief section on slavery with this: people of all races have been slaves. And then goes on to teach children that the main difference between the North and the South leading up to the Civil War wasn't slavery, but rather a fight between the independent-minded Southern states and an overbearing federal government, or as the textbooks put it, states' rights.
When you say states' rights, I always like to answer a state's rights to do what?
It's the state's rights to do what? To have slavery.
Textbooks like these are approved at the state level, but anyone, regardless of their accreditation, education, or agenda, is free to write or edit a school history textbook.
And sometimes when you go down the list of editors, some of them may not be historians. It could be a PTA mom. It could be a minister.
And because anyone can edit the contents of a history textbook,
you have to think of what perspective do they want to be told.
Around the start of the Reconstruction era, some white Southerners wanted to tell a whitewashed perspective of Civil War history. They started organizations dedicated to memorializing Confederate soldiers, erected statues to Confederate generals, and perhaps most troublingly, they established commissions dedicated to overseeing and recommending textbooks for children, which is why
slavery in our classrooms was taught as being this benign institution. Paternalistic slave owners, enslaved people as loving members of the white family. And of course, African Americans and African American scholars had always said, this makes no damn sense.
This is Hassan Kwame Jeffries, an associate professor of African American history at Ohio State University.
We really don't begin to see a change in the way slavery is taught in America's classrooms until the Civil Rights era, where African Americans are more thoroughly integrated into the decision-making in the classroom.
But progress was slow. For some states, those changes to their textbooks are only occurring today, a half-century later. In fact, this is the first year that public school students in Texas will be required to learn that slavery was the central cause of the Civil War.
It takes more work to undo the fucked up shit that our ancestors, or really y'all ancestors, did.
This is our colleague, Taryn Finley, editor of HuffPost Black Voices.
A part of the first step in addressing these things is to actually admit that the history that we're teaching our kids, they're lies. We're telling them lies.
The inaccuracies in children's textbooks are important to address because children grow up to be adults who say things like,
the lack of an ability to compromise led to the Civil War.
In order to ensure her students aren't taking in an agenda-driven view of history, Antoinette has basically tossed textbooks altogether.
How do I say what the facts are? I actually use primary source documents. You can't argue with the documents. And I take out the very first state to secede's paper, and I read them. The cause of the Civil War 100% was enslavement.
Alexander Stephens, Vice President of the Confederacy, says clearly, slavery is the cornerstone of the Confederacy.
Whether it be the economics of enslavement, the expansion of enslavement.
Confederates themselves are clear that slavery is the central cause of secession and the glue that is binding the states of the Confederacy. We don't have to make up words. We can use the own words of people in the time that they are living.
Yet even now, when most American textbooks include slavery as the cause of the Civil War, the problem isn't what's included in the textbooks, but
what's left out that makes these textbooks problematic.
For example, there's
almost no discussion of the fact that slavery existed in the North,
or that you could be opposed to the institution of slavery
and still believe in white supremacy. That is fundamental. If you do not get that, if you only get the anti-slavery side, if you only get the abolition side, and you drop the belief in white supremacy, then you wind up with a mistaken notion that racism is something that is confined solely to the South. By avoiding these hard topics of slavery and teaching it accurately, what we are doing is avoiding turning the camera back on ourselves and explaining why do we have the problems that we have today.
You will not replace us!
Progress is so slow. Change is so constant here, but progress is such a slow process. And a lot of that has to do with us not facing our
FDP!
If you can't accurately understand the past, the ways in which society has been built and constructed economically, politically, and socially, then you cannot make sense of the present. And if you can't make sense of the present, how on earth are you expected to solve the problems that are plaguing us today and will continue to plague us in the future?
I think it's important for our kids to know the truth, because they have to know where we've come from. But then they also have to understand the beautiful journey of overcoming, how you can be enslaved and start with nothing and become president of the United States of America.
So that was a very good video. This is no way in any form or any fashion an endorsement for the magazine HuffPost that presented the video, but it was very informative. You would have to agree. And it's going to help the panel that's going to speak afterwards to better facilitate that discussion. But before we bring the panel on, I want to talk about some of the goals that I think need to happen. First of all, there needs to be greater parental involvement. So if you have a circumstance and you're a parent and you're faced with this type of atrocity with your children, talk to the teacher first. And not only talk to the teacher about their intentions, but brainstorm with the teacher to give recommendations for the future. I just have a hard time believing that people go into teaching to harm our children. They go into teaching and they are not informed. And so we need to inform them. Parents, you also need to get involved in the textbook adoption process. We need to have you have input at the state level, at the district level, because the state approves the curriculum. And then based on the curriculum, the state looks at which books are the best. And for some reason, they pay more attention to history books. And so you need to be involved in that process. The second goal, this is for the schools and the teachers. Focus on the truth. And as the teacher said in the video, use primary sources instead of textbooks. If the textbook is not going to tell the truth, at least present the young people with items that tell the truth. Because the reality is that when they find out that you have lied to them, you completely sever any type of positive relationship that you would have with that child. And then that child is going to act out because they're going to know then that you're a liar. Also, and this is going to come down the pike, discuss the ethnicity of all involved. What type of Europeans were they? What was the history of those Europeans? Why were they expelled from Europe to come to America? And Europeans, they say they were expelled. That's why we got to dig into why. And so at least they are able to identify the entire truth. And then take the positive road, just like the teacher said in the video. What we have had to endure and what we have overcome is astronomical. And we continue to overcome and allow the Black students to know this is a historical picture of what you can do. And so when you take that perspective, now you're developing something positive with the student. And then the final goal, as the editor spoke in the video, she said the process of improvement and moving forward is what's difficult. And that's because nobody is using a transformative process. There's a lot of finger pointing. There's a lot of, talking about who did stuff wrong. And so what I would recommend is to begin with the PTA, the Parent Teacher Association, and begin with that organization looking at these textbooks. But in order for the transformative process to work, you want to develop a shared vision first. Then you want to develop goals, objectives, timelines, and a budget that's needed for this to happen. which is something I can do very well. But that's a transformative process that will work. Well, we covered, we looked at a case study, we did an overview, we looked at a video, which kind of gives us an overview of what the fundamental flaws are in the history and how they're teaching slavery. And then we did an overview of the problem as well as the recommendations. And then there were 3 goals: increase parental involvement, a redefined school teacher focus, and then utilizing a transformative process. Now let's talk about the contest. On our website, quarantineracism.com, we have an anti-racism symposium. And so all you have to do is go to the symposium and sign up. Now you can sign up either using your Facebook credentials or your email. And once you sign up, you either start a topic or you respond to a topic that's already there. And when I see it, I'm going to send you this nice bag, this nice quarantine racism bag. It's got deep pockets in the front. It's got another pocket in the front. It's even got a pocket in the back. It's a $45 value. Take 5, at the most 10 minutes of your time, and get yourself a free bag. This is Dr. Campbell. Our next session will be next Thursday, 8:00 p.m. You can also find Quarantine Racism on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, as well as Instagram. And so now let's turn it over to the panel. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I noticed that there are 2 people who are not showing their video. You're going to have to show your video. Otherwise, I'm going to have to disconnect you. So I'll give you a minute. We seem to continue. Thank you very much, Miss Nancy. How do you say your last name? Thank you.
E-K-E.
Thank you. As you could see, we have people who enjoy the topics that we discuss. And so they come and they attempt to be disruptive. And what they don't understand is what it really tells me is that what we're talking about and the fact that you all are part of the panel is important enough for them to disrupt us. And so that's an old trick that has been used for years. I'm supposed to get upset, and then I'm supposed to start cursing, and then I'm supposed to stop doing what I know the good Lord is calling me to do. But of course, I'm going to push on. And so, as I said before, I'm Dr. Campbell. Our discussion today is how to teach slavery lessons. And as I noted in the video, many of the teachers, especially the white teachers, are having great difficulty with what to expose our young people to and how to expose our young people to teaching slavery. And so I want to turn it over to the panel, and I want to know, do you all have any recommendations?
Well, I feel like it should be taught in the classroom because there needs to be change. Like slavery.
Now it looks like Miss Eek, did I get that right? Yeah, it looks like you froze on us and we didn't hear anything you said. You want to try it again?
So I was saying that we should be treated equally.
Okay.
I'm tired of hearing, oh, we have to be treated this way because of the color of our skin. No, we're supposed to be treated equally, just like anybody else.
Well, I think that some people, especially some of the people I know, they make an honest attempt at it, But they just don't know how to teach slavery to the young people. It's almost like teaching them. Well, it's not almost like, but the reality is they're teaching that their ancestors' behavior was inappropriate. And so, how do we get that to become more productive for children of color? Because it's not right now, it's not working. And you always hear about something across the nation. And the reality is, I've worked in the school district for a number of years. And what I do know is, even if they suspend the teacher, they can only suspend them temporarily. And then at worst, they get a note put in their personnel file, something about inappropriate behavior, and that's all we hear. And you know, when you look at it from a human resource perspective, they have a right not to have anybody provide publicly what they put in their personnel file. And so I think it just continues to frustrate us because that cycle continues to permeate itself. And so that's why I wanted to bring the panel together. And then that way, when teachers are looking for strategies or looking for ways to better teach the children about the subjects that are sensitive, racially sensitive, they will be able to get it firsthand from experts such as you.
So I think you said something extremely important as you were concluding the video and bringing response to that. You mentioned.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Can I stop you for a minute? Can you just take a minute and tell us who you are and just a little bit about yourself?
Yep, certainly. So my name is Sheila Campbell, and I'm not in the educational field, but I do a lot of instruction, and I am in human resources. But what I was going to say is that one of the things that you said was that you didn't believe that the majority of people who was teaching on this subject had maybe malintent, but more so that a lot of them are misinformed. Mm-hmm. And I think like anything else, when you have someone who's trying to teach subject matter that's beyond maybe their ability to comprehend, that there needs to be some training. And if we're seeing this happen across the nation or whatever the case may be, to me, that points to a problem, and that points to perhaps someone raising their hand and saying, okay, so now we need to go back and re-educate these teachers who are going to be teaching these history lessons exactly how they should be taught. Okay. So maybe there should be some examples or some even some instruction on or workshops on how do you properly teach this subject.
Okay. Anybody want to provide any additional feedback? Thank you, Sheila.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just here to observe.
Now, how do you say your name?
It's Ifoma.
Ifoma Akura?
Yes.
Akura?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. So now you said you're here to observe. Are you a teacher?
Yes.
Okay, very good, very good. So are you, well, I don't want to identify where you teach at, but do you teach primary or secondary?
I teach secondary.
Secondary. So you're teaching the big kids. So
yes.
So the big kids are a little more mature, but at the same time, they can get a little more excited about it. you know, and they can do real unique things like put you on Facebook and Twitter and all that other social media stuff. So what do you find that the teachers are having challenges with when it comes to teaching slavery lessons about slavery?
Well, I can say, because this is everything has been politicized, you know, like, because one thing that I have come to understand is that everybody's trying to be careful, you know, so that they don't offend anybody, or, you know, so that they don't hurt anybody's feeling. Mm-hmm. So because I teach in the majority of all Blacks kid, and then the kids are all Black, but the teachers are more white.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't feel comfortable teaching that because they think that, the kids can get upset and get angry, because of what they've done and then decided to attack them. So I'm seeing it from the perspective that everybody's trying to protect themselves, and sometimes when I look at, because I teach all subjects, because I'm a special ed teacher, precise, so which I teach history also. So when I come to those areas, I look at the group that I have, even myself, I look at the things that, okay, would this, if I teach this based on the curriculum that I have, would this offend this person?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to be called in the principal office and at the end of the day, I will have a bad day and go home, because I have my family that I have to come to.
Mm-hmm.
So do you understand? Everybody's just trying to be careful in order not to be called out.
Well, I agree with you. I think the bigger challenge is that the teachers, the white female teachers, are afraid, and they are afraid of the repercussions.
Yes.
They're afraid that the students will want to take revenge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so that is a valid concern. But the reality is that the kids know the truth, and if you stand in front of me and you tell me something different, which is a lie, then the kids are probably going to be even more offended that you stood in front of the classroom and you just lied to them. So one of the things that I specialize in is teacher-student racial relationships. There's no way in the world that you can believe that you can improve racial relationships by lying to the kids. You can't do it. And so I think in education, we have to reach a point where the truth has to be exposed. Now, of course, the kids, because their expectations for their behavior, if they go the wrong way, there does have to be some accountability. Because I'm a former principal, assistant principal, and I do discipline too. And so I always believe if the kids do something, there's got to be some type of consequence. But there has to be a way. I like what the teacher said, is that maybe we need to teach it from the perspective of how we were enslaved, well, how our ancestors were enslaved, and then the process that it took to overcome it. And then that way, any obstacle that you may have in your life, you still can overcome it, but it still exposes the truth. But I get what you're saying, because even if you teach, you said special ed, right? So you teach special ed, and the way they not transmit, but the way they interpret information is completely different than what a regular education child may do. And so it's got to be even more excitable. And so how do you teach something that you're afraid that there may be repercussions? And that is the issue, but it has to be taught. And I think part of the blame, you have to start at the top. In the video, they talked about the state and how the state approves every textbook, how the state approves every curriculum. I think they have to take some of the responsibility in allowing it for centuries, because this has been going on for at least 150 years, at least. And so we have to get to the point where the truth is told, and then I believe that the kids can move on. It's a hard one. It's a really hard one. So what do you do? When it comes, yeah, when it comes to that time that you're going to teach about slavery, what do you do?
what do? I teach it because I know where I came from. So I use where I came from, where I'm from to teach it.
Okay.
So for them to understand that this started all the way back, so there's way because in order for me to teach it, I have to modify it.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So I have to modify it in a way that they can understand it. So the truth about teaching slavery and teaching racism is first of all breaking it down in a way that even the pre-K kids will understand what we are talking about. Even sometimes us an adult, because I see people say, "Oh, I'm not a racist," but their actions says otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm teaching about slavery, so I start from the origin, how it all started from, like I grew up with my mom telling me stories of what happened using what is it called? I forgot. Like uh, to tell a story, old, like when an elder is telling you a story of what happened in the past. So I use it. I tell it as a story.
Mm-hmm.
I teach it as a story. So that they all understand. They all like get thrilled. They want to know what happened next. So teaching it as a story will help the kids to understand. Oh, okay, this is a story, and it's but from one stage to another stage, we do it stage by stage. I don't know about other people, but you don't just, there are things you don't just jump in, dump on any child, on anybody. Okay, because they will like, okay, I don't know. This is there, so this is so mean and so, so cruel. So I teach that stage by stage, and I teach it in a story form. So that they, I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that's how I teach it.
So I think you said something very operative, though. You said you teach it from a story, but you have some history to look back on. You have some reality to look back on. But the challenge is that I would say a large majority of the teachers who are given that type of instruction may not have that reference point. So they can't go back to a story that their grandmother told them. And so when you talk about starting at the state level to modify the textbooks, that could take some time. So in the interim, and even if they do modify textbooks, teachers still have a certain liberty to create their own, how they're going to interpret that lesson. And so that's why I believe that there has to be some acknowledgement and some education for teachers who can't go back and say, I can tell it from a story that my grandmother told me. So how do we balance that? Because if we're looking at the ratio of teachers, maybe teachers of a different ethnicity teaching our children, and that ratio is off and not balanced, how do you get to that point?
And thank you, Sheila. But I also want to say to you, Miss Okoro, let me make sure I get it right, is that to stand in front of the kids as a Black person is very different. Mm-hmm. Very different, because of the subject matter, you already have an in with the children. And so I like what you said when you said teaching it in stages. And I'm wondering if we need to take the history books and in the beginning, whatever part of slavery was going on, talk about it. It's almost like slavery alongside history. So if something happened in 1898, even though this fantastic event happened on the slavery side, this was what was happening. And then that way, when you start to walk the kids down the road, they're already kind of become accustomed to, oh yeah, this teacher has been telling me all the time that throughout history, there was some part of slavery, and the slavery was really bad. So now it doesn't sound like I'm lying to you. And so that's why I say I like the way that you're teaching them. You're teaching them in very small stages. The other part is, if you teach them in small stages, you also get to read their reactions. And if you can read their reactions, then in your next lesson, you can kind of modify it a little bit. Maybe you got to soften it up a little bit, but we still have to get to the point where the teachers are going to have to tell the truth. And I'm just wondering, and I'm asking you and Sheila this question, do you think the teachers should actually apologize for the behavior of their ancestors? What do you think about that?
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
I say that because it's like me trying to apologize for something that someone else did. I mean, it was. We can't change that. I think all we can do is exemplify the behavior that we want to project going forward. I think that's apology enough, where you're saying, hey, I acknowledge that this was done, but now what are we going to do to make sure that it doesn't repeat itself in whatever aspect of slavery that may exist now? So although we may not be, beholden to someone, a slave master, we may be enslaved in different ways. So how can we now acknowledge that to some degree, and then be able to demonstrate to the kids, because actions, as we know, speak much louder than our words. And if I'm a teacher that's going to stand before my class, and I may not be of the same ethnic background, but I've demonstrated all those characteristics that treats people with dignity and respect, they're going to understand that that's not who I am. So all you can do is tell the story as a teacher.
So I want to go. So I appreciate that comment, but I want to go to the older kids, because the older kids are going to say, well, the way I look at things is you're benefiting. You have benefited from this generational racism. And if you get some of the ones who are really intelligent, they will say things like, well, look at our test scores. All the black kids mostly fail, and the white kids are mostly passing. How can you say that you're not being racist against me, and that's why we're getting those results? What do you think about that? No comment? Because that's what you're going to get from parents. That's what you're going to get from the advocate groups, or the activist groups. That's what they're going to say. They're going to say, okay, well, you told the kids that, I took up teaching because I wanted to make up for it. But then when we look at the statistics, and you look at things like the school to prison pipeline, you look, like I said before, you look at the underachievement of Black children since 1972, how can you say that you really here to help me? It sounds like you came to teach, to continue that pattern.
I think there has to be some responsibility on both sides. I just, and obviously I don't have the school background, but I still think that there has to be some responsibility. Surely there has to be tests that the rubric is so clear that if the person on the other side does the work, meaning the student, that they have the same chance of having success as the others. Okay. So, I think there has to be some double responsibility there.
Now, Miss Okoro, where are you from?
Precise, I'm from Nigeria, but I'm here in the state.
You're from Nigeria. Okay. So we got a little lineage going on. And I thank you for coming here and teaching our children. How do you help out your white colleagues? How do you help them?
What last year, a colleague of one of my students, because I did co-teach last year. So my co-teacher was white and I'm Black. So, and then the majority of our students were all Black. So that was why when I talked about the white feeling, they are not comfortable to teach that because they don't want to offend. There something that happened in the classroom where we talked about sickle cell anemia. So that incident led to that most of the sickle cell are Black. So one of the students who went home and told their parents that the white teacher said that the majority of the people with sickle cell are African Americans. And then she said she want to go test if she's sickle cell. So, and it happens that the mom said something about it, and then the kid comes to school so angry. So that led to a lot of things. So I called my colleague. I said, okay, can we please for now change this topic? You know, because of the tension that is in the classroom, because it's not just one person now, it's everybody. So immediately she felt like, you know, which word will I use? She felt like that I've pushed her, you know, that I've made her, she felt like she thought something that was not supposed to be thought. You know, so she went into anxiety attack at that moment. It was a big. So I said, no, it is the call out. The call out is what the problem is. So you how you taught the whole thing is what caused the tension, because you said 99% is African American, has sickle cell. So sometimes, so it's really, so that's why I said even the white teachers are very concerned. If I say this, how would this thing happen? What, how will people take this? Because to be sincerely speaking, this is an emotional topic. It's an emotional topic, and people can go at any length to react to this. And then once this thing goes on social media, it becomes something else. Even people who don't even know how it all started, will blow things out of proportion. So, and like I said, every teacher, including myself, to be honest, including myself. That's why I said I'm here to observe, because I want to learn. How do I handle the issue of racism? Because even being here this is my 12 years in this country. I've gone through a lot, trying to be where I am today in the educational system, and I know what I've been through. So it kind of like made me, I'm very careful when it comes to things like this.
Well, it sounds like the teacher isolated some facts that pertain to African Americans.
Yeah.
And what she could have did instead was talked about diseases of all the different races at the same time.
Yes.
So if she had said something like, well, did you know that 99% of the skin cancer cases are white people, and 99% are sickle cell anemia. So now kids, and because the way they translate information, kids are saying, oh, okay, so everybody gets sick. It's just not us. And so that's what it really sounded like, was she isolated it to what she was trying to teach. She isolated it to only to African Americans. But you see, to be honest with you, that's what they try to do in the history books when they say stuff like, well, all races experienced slavery. Okay. So you can't always use that at all. And so I have somebody who's trying to enter, and I'm not going to let them in. I think we've had enough disturbances for the day. And so I am going to end this right now. And before we end, I just wanted to know, is there something that you would like to say, Ms. Okoro, as well as Ms. Campbell, to leave with the teachers who are going to have to teach the kids the truth about racism?
I think first you have to have an awareness that maybe what you have learned is not truth. So it's almost it lends to the statement that sometimes sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
And if you don't know what you don't know, you won't know it until someone tells you. So I think that's why I still go back to my original point, is that there has to be a conscious effort on the part of whomever is in control of that particular school, to make sure that when not just African American history, but other types of histories or whatever the case may be, that their teachers, their staff, especially if they don't have a personal relation to the information, is well equipped.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Okoro, would you like to leave us with something?
Yeah, I would say, thank you for this forum.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I've learned a lot from Michelle, you know, how she responded to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, as a teacher on the ground, it's not that easy, you know, because you want to go home. You do not want to be called out. You want to go home safe. You want to go back home to your family safe, without, you know, anybody trying to call you out that you're making, you know. So if there is any way, like I help my white teachers, you know, like all the races that racial that I teach with, whether Asian or Black American, Africa, all the group Indians that I work with, I tell them, as a child of God, we all are one. I never knew anything about racism until I got here. So that's why when people talk about it, I looked at them very strange. I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. Okay, because as long as I'm concerned, on the last day, when you go bye-bye, which means when the Lord calls us home, it's not gonna say, oh, you're Black, you're white. So so that is my belief as a child of God, because I am a child of God. So, and that is what I stand for. There is no white, no Black, no green in the presence of God. We all are His beautiful, He created us. He made us in His own image and likeness. So I preach that every day. You know, I teach that to my kids. I say, we all are equal. You see this person, you see this white, you see this person. Nobody is, we all are, it's called country, continents, but we all are human beings. Amen. Made in God's image.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We want to thank you for being a panelist today. If you know of any teachers that could benefit from this session that we had today, it'll be on the website, quarantineracism.com. And so once again, thank you and have a great day tomorrow.
And you too. Bye-bye.
All right.